Welcome, everybody. Give it another 30 seconds or so as folks are coming in from the waiting room here. All right, so people are still trickling in, but since it is 1:01, why don't we go ahead and get started? Sammy, do you want to kick us off here?
Yes. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our cybersecurity webinar series. We are so excited to have MCNC join us today, describing the new attack surface monitoring, kind of the EdgeGuard 2.0 service we've been hearing about. I'm very excited about this. And we're going to go ahead and hand it off to Ruthie to get us going. There will be, I think we got a slide in here that talks about our next webinar. We always like to chain these together. MCNC is going to be doing a twofer for us. We got attack surface monitoring this time, and then we are going to be doing more of the firewall monitoring backed by popular demand. So Ruthie, I have some more details on that at the end. So thank you all very much for joining us. We're very excited. Ruthie, back to you.
Great. Thank you, Sammy. And again, thank you and welcome, everybody. I'm Ruthie Mabe from MCNC. I've done a few of these now, so hopefully I know everyone here on the call. Joining me from MCNC is Eric Lee, the primary engineer working on this attack surface monitoring service with me here today. So we did want to give you an overview of a little background on why we're making this change, and then talking about what changes we've actually made and where we are in that process, and sort of give you guys a next steps and a sneak peek into what the portal will look like for you guys in the future. So Eric, before I get started, anything you want to add sort of here immediately?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay, all right, great. Well, I will go ahead and get started then. So as Sammy mentioned, we have been working on this for quite some time now. MCNC's attack surface monitoring is an iteration of the vulnerability monitoring services that we've been providing for some years now. Historically, the first thing that we rolled out for K-12 was the AVA service, which was really self-service for you as a tool, and utilized the Kenna platform and the OpenVAS vulnerability scanning technology, and allowed you to sort of look at your own vulnerability data. And then back in 2020, early 2021 is when we took that tool as a service and transitioned it into a managed service where it was MCNC security operations teams looking at and monitoring the vulnerability information that was present in that environment. And that's what we've been doing for the K-12 community since, right? So you've become used to receiving our quarterly reports where we send, a big data dump of all of the information that we see, vulnerabilities, assets that we've identified, and then we're monitoring on a regular basis. If new assets are popping up, you've probably received emails from us that say, hey, this new asset is here, maybe not vulnerable. Just want to let you know, just in case it was intentional or not. We've seen, simple misconfiguration of a firewall could expose something that was unintended, right? So that's been an ongoing service, and it's been pretty well received in the community. We had quite a few reasons as to why we wanted to make some changes to this service. We've been very happy with Kenna and what we've been doing with the open source OpenVAS scanner, but ultimately at the end of the day, we needed more from this service, and the OpenVAS vulnerability scanner wasn't going to get us there. And so looking long term, we really wanted to make sure that we could be prepared to continue to provide this service and adjust as our community's attack surface is changing, and being able to see more and provide more precise recommendations. And then at the end of the day, ultimately continue to enable you and your team to see the important information that you need to see about your environment. So that being said, we worked with DPI, and a couple of weeks ago, Tim Lees from DPI sent out the announcement of this transition, right? So MCNC is sunsetting what we are doing with our EdgeGuard and AVA services, and then we are moving towards this new attack surface monitoring service. So rest assured that during this migration period, even though we haven't sent out the quarterly reports, we have been continuing to monitor your environment, and will continue to do so using the EdgeGuard platform until we fully migrated over to the attack surface monitoring. Sammy is going to get the information about this service up on the website once we've done the full migration. So, where you can go and find, the information about all of DPI's cybersecurity program tools and services that are available to you. So, and then as we go through this migration process, and once we're fully migrated, we will provide additional training. So today, Eric's going to show you some screenshots of the portal that we will be able in the future to provide access to you as a PSU that's been enrolled in this service. That's coming a little bit later. So the screenshots that you see today are provided to the MCNC security operations team to monitor and manage, and in the future will be available to you as an individual PSU wanting to engage with your own data. So, Eric, as a preamble, anything I missed there? You want me to go ahead and get started?
Nope, you're doing great. Keep going.
Okay. Oh, thanks. I'm just going to keep chiming in for Eric's positive affirmation here. All right. So, what we decided to do as we went through a pretty lengthy evaluation process for different technologies in this space, at the end of the day, MCNC decided to choose the Palo Alto Cortex Expanse platform. We obviously have a pretty strong relationship already with Palo Alto, as they're the provider for the firewall technology for our managed firewall service. So they made a lot of sense for us to continue down that road from a partnership perspective. But when we looked at the various tools that were out there from an MSP model, the Cortex Expanse platform really made the most sense. So as we go through this, I'll highlight some of the things that are new to the service compared to what we're doing today. Today what we're doing with EdgeGuard is we are scanning the NCRIN IP space that has been provided to you as a K-12 connected to MCNC's internet. And so we are looking at, through EdgeGuard, just those IPs. If you have anything additional, if you have any additional IP space, or if you have domains and certificates and things like that that are associated with your entity, then we don't have that visibility. So with the Cortex Expanse platform, they're doing just that, right? So we provided them seed data, and they are continuously scanning the internet for assets associated with that seed data for your institution, and then we are able to see beyond just those IP addresses that we know about, right? So from an active learning perspective, again, it's using some supervised machine learning to continue to model what that attack surface looks like for you as a PSU. So again, this is unauthenticated scans of your network perimeter and looking at identifying what those assets are that are associated with you, and then going that step further of identifying those vulnerabilities that are then associated with those assets. Just like with the EdgeGuard service, this is going to be fully managed. So MCNC's security operations team is going to be continuing to monitor your environment, the changes that are happening to your attack surface. Those regular reporting cadence that you've become used to from an EdgeGuard perspective will continue with the attack surface monitoring solution as well. The big benefit is that there's going to be increased efficiencies, increased visibility for the security operations team, and the types of recommendations that are coming out of the Cortex Expanse platform are much more precise based on their ability to better fingerprint the devices that are being identified, and then being able to provide that custom recommendation to the specific device and the vulnerabilities associated with that. So in addition to the Cortex Expanse platform specifically being the thing that's being changed out, what's included, and there's increased visibility. I mentioned that earlier. So we're not just looking at those IP addresses anymore. We're going to be looking at the domains, the certificates, services associated with your environment. I'm going to skip forward here just a little bit, many of you have already seen the inventory spreadsheets that were sent out last week, and you've seen this type of information, right? What's been discovered through that active discovery component. The attack surface rule customization piece there. I'll let Eric talk a little bit more about when he starts to share the slides associated with the portal, but this is a pretty significant improvement and goes along with that enterprise scanning technology bullet. Both of those are in association in comparison to what we've been doing with OpenVAS. It's a pretty much a black box, right? What we're able to see about the vulnerabilities, the way that scanner is configured. It's an open source tool, right? With this, because we are utilizing Palo Alto's scanning technology, they are looking for very specific things and are populating those in the portal for that full visibility of what we're able to see. And then we have the ability to look at the attack surface rules and customize them to, what is important to our community. And again, Eric will talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So then active discovery, I've already hit on. The last bullet there, the PSU access coming soon. So the business unit is what the Cortex Expanse platform calls you as a PSU, an entity. And we are working through the access piece for that. So starting out, it's going to be very similar to the way that MCNC is operating the EdgeGuard service. We see the portal, we see the data, we're parsing it and providing the custom recommendations for you. With the, once we are able to move through this migration period, we're able to look at providing you as the PSU access to the portal where you can interact with your own data. It'll still be read-only access, but you will be able to interact with that and work with our team as false positives are identified, right? And we'll be able to fine-tune the data together in the portal itself. One other thing on this slide is the increased scan cadence. So today we scan on a weekly basis. And as many of you have taken advantage of in the past, if you do some remediation efforts and you want to quickly check and see if that's done, you can reach out to us and ask us to rescan the one IP address. We're able to do that pretty quickly and easily. Here at a minimum, we're going to be scanning twice weekly. And so again, that alone is an increase in that visibility for our team and for you. Eventually, our goal is to get to scanning daily. There will be some more discussion around that where you will need to add, the Expanse scanner IPs into, your allow list from your firewall. If you're getting the MCNC firewall service, that's something that we can work with you on. But ultimately, what that will do is, it will allow, the quote good guys scanner activity to scan that network perimeter and not be dropped because it appears to be scanning activity. It's a good thing to have that type of protection on at your firewall to block that scanning traffic, but you don't want it to obscure the actual results that may come back if you're able to pinpoint one IP address, right? A threat actor can circumvent those protections and and their traffic, that scan traffic, can appear not to be scanning traffic, right? And so that type of protection wouldn't block that activity from a threat actor. So adding that, again, you don't need to do this today. That biweekly scan cadence doesn't require that, so no changes are necessary on your part. But in the future, as we move towards that daily scanning cadence, we will request that. So service update. So where we are today. So obviously, we've gone through this development activity. We've set up the business units in the Cortex Expanse platform. We've worked with Expanse based on the seed data that we've provided, and we have audited all of the discovered assets and grouped them as appropriate. So what's happening now is everyone should have received, if you are connected to MCNC to NCREN as an internet customer of ours through DPI, you should have received a list of your discovered assets. And so we didn't include any vulnerability information in there. It was just the discovered assets that we've identified. Last week, we started sending that asset inventory out and requested that you provide us feedback, and we already have received a lot of feedback. So thank you if you're one of the PSUs that has already gotten back to us. So you guys have until the end of the month, so that's next week, to provide us any additional feedback that you have on those assets that we've sent over to you. There's been a lot of really good feedback that we've seen from the community around just regular hygiene cleanup type things. Hey, this DNS record is old, we're going to remove it, thanks. That sort of stuff works its way out, right? So you give us that feedback, no changes are required, because once you remove that entry, then we won't see it anymore and it will drop off your asset list. So really what we're looking for is major errors. Is there a domain that's associated with your entity that is not actually associated with you, or vice versa? Are there some obvious domains and or IP space that should be included that we didn't? That sort of thing. If you don't get back to us by the end of the month, we are going to move forward, and based on the assumption that the assets that we discovered are the right assets associated with you as an entity. This period of evaluation and validation is critical to get things started, but it will continue through the life of this service because of the active discovery component. It continuing to go out there and look for new assets. New things may pop up that are interesting and worth taking a look at. So as those come up, we'll vet them and then share them with you. And again, it'll be the opportunity 6 months from now, a year from now, for you to come back and say, hey, that's not associated with me. So this validation piece doesn't end, is my point. And so once we get through the end of February and we've received all the feedback, we've closed the loop with you, if you provided feedback, then our security operations team will begin to parse the data based on the now confirmed list of assets and the associated vulnerabilities with those. So we will work through that next month, with the goal then to begin those quarterly reports again. So you will get a quarterly report from us after we go through that initial review, and then we will be back on that regular cadence, utilizing the Expanse platform, and we'll move away from that EdgeGuard platform and technologies that we're using previously. So that's where we are from a service update perspective. If you haven't, I should have said this earlier, I do have the Q&A open. So if you would like to send any questions to us along the way here, you're more than welcome to. If you have not received a report and you feel like you should have, please give me, send me your contact information and the name of your PSU. I'll be happy to make sure that gets sent to you. And then in general, if you have any questions and would like to, touch base with us, then obviously you know how to get in touch with us. All right, now, Eric, I think it is your slide.
Let's find out. Right. Oh yeah, it is. All right. Awesome. Yeah. How's it going, everybody? So really just kind of want to walk you through kind of this simulation in screenshot mode of the console. As you might expect, a lot of the value of the tool comes in with the interactivity. So, once we get closer to being able to add your access, we'll be able to do more with this and show you things specific to your environment rather than having to redact things so you don't accidentally expose any customer data during this preview. But, being able to click into an asset and see what active services are associated with that asset is a big plus here. Also being able to click into individual services and see what specific alerts are associated with those services. So we'll kind of walk through those, but for now, we're dealing with the screenshots. So just bear with us here. The first thing I do want to talk about a little bit is just the asset inventory. Specifically where it differs from what we're doing now with the OpenVAS and Kena-based scans. So as Ruthie mentioned, this tool is capable of reporting on a much wider array of assets. With our current EdgeGuard services, we're really just looking at IPs, what IPs are responding to the external scans that we're doing. from the MCRIN network. So, it's only looking at those IP addresses. So anything beyond that doesn't report on that. And it's also only reporting on IP addresses in that known IP range. So, when we initially seeded that information in OpenVAS, we are the ISP for most of you guys. So we know what your IP range is, or at least the defined IP range. But obviously, in today's world, there's a lot of cloud computing and other things, third-party providers. So it's pretty likely that, a lot of our customers have data that's not on assets that are actually owned by them. So being able to expand that asset type and expand on what we're able to report on is a big plus with this service. So you can see here in this asset inventory screen, we are detecting things like certificates, also detecting domains, and then we detect things like responsive IPs, essentially. And these are all generated. This is a real customer data set that was basically just seeded, as Ruthie mentioned, with their known IP range and also organizational information. So essentially the name and known domains for that organization. So based on that, it comes back to us with all these assets in the inventory. So that includes, certificates. So based on the attribution, we are able to see why they believe a certificate belongs to our specific customer and is in that business unit. So it's able to do that based on things like looking at the registration information of the certificate to determine, who it belongs to. Same thing with the domains. So, if we have a domain listed, it's able to report on that. And then if it has any IP addresses associated with that domain, like if you're hosting your website on AWS or some other third-party provider, it's able to associate that domain with those IP addresses, even when they lie outside of your defined IP range. So when we're looking at the inventory, we're seeing mainly just, the general information about those assets, what they are, where they exist, do they have active services associated with them, when were they identified, when was the last time they were seen. There's didn't get this in the screenshot because it's too far over to the right, but it also includes things like what vulnerabilities are inferred on this asset based on what Palo is able to detect, based on what the Expanse tool is able to detect. So essentially what you can think of that is, and we'll see this on the next screen as well, Expanse has a much greater ability to determine what's actually in use on the assets. So if you've seen our Expanse reports in the past, we show things like website misconfigurations, expired certificates, a certain level of vulnerabilities based on some of the technologies they're able to identify. With Palo, it's able, there's a much wider array of services that they're actually able to identify. And they're able to infer vulnerabilities based on what they're able to detect on that asset, based on, the services and operating systems that they're able to fingerprint, and correlate that to known vulnerabilities on those products, and then come away with a inferred CV or an inferred vulnerability score and inferred CVEs that are basically saying that, it looks like you have Apache on this system. It looks like you're running this version of Apache, and we know that every version of Apache that's older than a certain version has this particular vulnerability on that. So therefore, it's worth looking into to confirm whether that's the case and whether that vulnerability actually exists on that server, and whether there might be some updates or patches that should be applied. So yeah, we can jump to the next slide now. So this is kind of a wide array of screens. It touches on a number of different areas of the console. So, once we have a list of your assets, those are further broken out into what Palo refers to as services. There's a screen based on that, and then also websites. And for each of those, there's a number of different search filters and parameters that we're able to look into that detect things like what they call active classifications, which, as you can see, there's a pretty fairly wide array of technologies or classifications there, everything from does the server have Flash running on it, or Cisco iOS or F5? So it's able to identify those types of operating systems or other technologies. It's also looking for some of the things that you're probably more accustomed to hearing about from us, things like expired certificates, the infamous insecure ciphers and protocols that you're probably tired of hearing about from us, and everything like that. Um, it also goes into being able to filter based on the specific types of services. So it will identify things like FTP servers, HTTP, and a pretty wide array of those as well. Then finally, it also goes into things like externally detected providers. So it's able to detect services that are running on, whether it's AWS or Akamai, or, pretty much any of the common ones. We would be able to search and filter on who's actually hosting that content, whether it's on your premises or not. And then finally, on this far right side here, the technologies. Just did a quick search there for Google just to give you an idea. But there's this is more tied towards, if the servers or assets are actually running HTTP or HTTPS servers, and they're able to detect a pretty wide array of, excuse me, of technologies. Think of that in addition to all the Google things we see there, things like WordPress plugins, different types of shopping cart interactions, and things like that. So those are all tools that Palo is able to use to, really give you a better idea of what's actually running on your assets. And dovetailing into that, that's also how they're going to be generating the alerts that we'll look at. And so if we go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about the attack surface rules. So as Ruthie mentioned also, one of the other benefits of the Expanse platform is the ability to customize and configure the rules and essentially what they're going to be alerting on. So these attack surface rules are going to determine, when these alerts get generated, and essentially when our SecOps team springs into action and investigates things, lets you know when there's something to be concerned about. So there's about, at this point, I think, yeah, actually at the top it says 731 attack surface rules that are currently present in the console. They do come to us out of the box with a certain set of default rules enabled. And part of the big benefit here is we're able to customize this set of rules to more accurately reflect what we anticipate our customer base is going to be concerned about or likely to use in our environment. So we did also go through each of those rules and enable ones that looked like would be of interest to our customer base, whether it's something that would be likely to be present on customer environments, or even if it's not something that's likely to be present, it's serious enough to to have that rule enabled. So if it ever did show up anywhere in customer environments, we would get an alert based on that. So these attack surface rules are pretty varied. It can be anything from just letting you know that it identified a service. So maybe it's a service that there's no major vulnerabilities associated with it, but still worth knowing about, still worth keeping an eye on. And, because maybe it's not the type of thing that you necessarily want to have exposed to the outside world. That's really the kind of the overarching goal of this service, is basically to give you visibility into what malicious actors have visibility into. So if Expanse can see it and they shouldn't be able to see it, then that gives us a chance to close that hole before somebody who is actually trying to exploit something is able to see it. So just the presence of an external service or something with a specific operating system might generate an attack surface rule. It's also able to, and there are rules present that would alert if there is a known vulnerability identified on the service. So whether it's something where, like before, if it's alerting on an out of date or unpatched Apache system, or even just looking for a specific CVE that they're able to confirm is present on an asset. So it's a pretty wide array there. And so once we have this attack surface rule set configured, once those rules are triggered in any customer environment, they will result in the triggering of alerts. So if we go to the next slide, we'll actually start by talking about incidents. Incidents are essentially just any number of alerts on a particular asset and a particular service associated with that asset. So Expanse will just aggregate those alerts together. Here we can see a sample alert where, it does say there's an insecure Apache web server running on this asset. There's also a number of other alerts associated. We can see below that there's potential HTTP misconfiguration. And then, if we were able to scroll down, we'd be able to see what the rest of those alerts indicate as well. But if we were able to click into that alert, that top Apache alert, we can see what that would look like in the next slide. And so here, if you're familiar with our current service, or maybe even had access to the Kenna platform, if you're one of the original users of the EdgeGuard or the AVA service, you're probably familiar with just looking at seeing what Kenna has as generally 1 to 2 sentences showing you a description of what they've detected. In some cases, those descriptions can be a bit misleading. And then, there's maybe 1 or 2 sentences about the remediation. So that's another big plus about the Expanse platform. They do go into much greater detail about these alerts, give you a little more context about, what what this vulnerability indicates or what this alert indicates, why it's something that you should be concerned about. And then also going through, step-by-step instructions on, what you should do about it, whether it's something that needs to be patched, or, maybe it's just something that, without a valid business case doesn't need to be exposed externally at all. But Palo is able to give you more of step-by-step instructions. So, to start with, that's going to be what our operations folks are using as the kind of the baseline to when they let you know about things that the Expanse platform has identified in your environment. And then ultimately, when you have access to the platform, these are things that you'll have access to and be able to look at on your own, to be able to look at these mitigations and see how to remediate and get those security holes closed. And then in the middle, there's just kind of a brief overview as well, showing some of the services that were identified on this asset, including things like, we can see the specific Apache version that was identified when the scan was run. Also goes into things on the server as well, things like the wildcard certificate, seeing where some of the headers might be missing that are generally recommended best practices. So there is a lot more information in the Expanse tool than there has been, and than we've been able to provide you in the past with the Open Bass and Kenna-based service. All right, I think one more slide potentially. So actually 2 more slides because I broke this one up. So just briefly want to talk a little bit about their threat response center as well. This is Expanse is emerging threat center essentially. So, think about when, there's a new 0-day or a new critical threat that's out there getting a lot of press. Expanse will actually come in and build a dashboard to, provide all the details about that specific threat. So you can see on this top level, this is one of the recent Ivanti vulnerabilities that's come out. That was the result or the impetus for this emergency directive from CISA. So at the top here, we can see that, at the moment, none of our customer base had any active alerts associated with this. We can also see the related attack surface rules, which are all enabled at the moment. So we could see, if there is a threat response that came out that had an associated attack surface rule that was disabled, we'd be able to easily tell that and then ultimately be able to get that rule enabled. And then, we can also see if there were any related results or incidents broken out by business units, what their status is, who they're assigned to, things like that. And then next slide. And then finally, just going back to talking about or just pretty closely tied into the alerts that we were just looking at, we do have visibility into, the actual remediation or mitigation steps that they recommend taking in response to, if this were identified in your customer network, and then also goes into the actual software that's impacted and specific software versions. So we're able to, more accurately determine what the attack surface is in that case. So I think that's probably a good stopping point there. Ruthie, I'm going to hand it back to you. I assume we're going to open it up to questions if there's anything there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a couple of questions already come in. And so one, just in case you're searching your inbox feverishly looking for the asset report, the title of the email address would have been Action Required Attack Surface Monitoring Asset Review. And it would have come from MCNC and it would have been Bree Steinel. So I will put her information in the chat here in just a second. Another question came in about exporting data out of Expanse based on a particular IP address or a alert. So day one, MCNC's security operations team is the one that's going to have access to the Expanse portal, and we will be working on sending you a report, different format, but similar to the quarterly reports that you've been receiving from MCNC. So the goal is to work with DPI, continue this service, and then be able to grant each of you access to your own business units. Once you have access, then all of the slides that Eric just overviewed are visible to you as well, all those sections in the Expanse platform. And so if you want to set up the ability to send yourself and or your team alerts based on things that you're interested in above and beyond or different than what the MCNC security operations team would be able or would be doing for you, we can absolutely support you in that. So as we move through again this migration period, we're going to get everybody up and running. Our security operations team will send out that initial quarterly report for review. And then once we move towards beginning to grant you access to your own business unit in Expanse, we will over communicate and help with training around that. We'll make sure that you get the appropriate level of access that you need, but then also provide you similar training to what Eric's overviewing right here. This is helpful information, but if you don't know what to do with it and you don't know how to navigate the platform itself, any of you who have gone through our onboardings with the endpoint service know that we can break this stuff up and be pretty thorough, so that by the end of the call you hopefully will be empowered to do the things that you want to do yourself. But then again, knowing that the security operations team at MCNC will continue doing that continuous monitoring and alerting. All right, so let's see here. Is this the same information that we get from CrowdStrike on the servers? So Eric, I don't know if you want to talk about the types of differences there.
Yeah, I can take that. So it's similar. So obviously CrowdStrike does have the vulnerability management tool that's able to report on vulnerabilities. So there's a good chance that they could start identifying the same things if CrowdStrike's running on those servers that are also externally visible. The main difference is with CrowdStrike, it's going to be running on the kernel in those devices. So CrowdStrike would potentially have a little bit better visibility into what's running on the system, maybe identifying the versions to a little more granularity than Expanse would, since Expanse is externally scanning. It's not an authenticated scan, so it's basically restricted to what's being exposed to the outside world. So that's one difference. The other difference is, with Expanse running external scanning and doing the active discovery, CrowdStrike is giving you that information on the systems where CrowdStrike is installed. But Expanse is going to be giving you that information, on any assets that it identifies belonging to you, whether or not it's something that, CrowdStrike is installed on, or maybe even something that, you're not aware of or may have forgotten about at some point.
Great. Thank you, Eric. So there's another question about how many folks will have access to the organization. Once we start rolling out the access, so I don't want to commit to anything here yet because we haven't gone through the process of doing that additional development. I don't anticipate there being any issues with granting as many folks as you have at your institution that you want to have access to the portal. I don't anticipate that being an issue. But again, if you can sit tight on those questions specific to how you will get access, when you'll get access, to when we make that announcement, and then provide that additional training for you. And like I said, we'll communicate through both MCNC and DPI to make sure that we get a really good opportunity to get that word out there of the change of giving you that access. Okay. I think that is all the questions that we have. Any others that you guys want to send our way? Okay. Well, while we're waiting on that, let me just say that, we will, be providing this recording to the DPI and the Friday Institute, so it'll get linked on the page for the cybersecurity program, and you will be able to, watch it again if you would like, and or send it to any of your colleagues who may have missed it. I did get asked to add this. So if you guys would like to have, their certificate of participation for a CE, the link is here. I can also, actually, I don't know if I can do this live here. Maybe I can copy link. Yeah. Let me see if I can paste this in the chat and be real slick here. Boom, look at that. Everyone should have had the link in the chat now. So if you would like that, that is now available to you. And then again, if you don't grab it, it'll be in the recording for you in the future to reference as well. And then as Sammy mentioned, we do have in March, we have the the next webinar series is going to be MCNC's firewall team providing additional training on the Panorama platform. So I know there's been some interest in, if you have the managed firewall from MCNC, learning the full capabilities of the Panorama platform, what you can do in there, even with the read-only access. So we have one of the engineers who will come on and do a deep dive. There have been some additional features that have turned on recently. In the meantime, if you do have any questions, you can always, about the firewall service specifically, you can reach out to secops@mcnc.org. I just put that in the chat as well. And they can provide you any ad hoc training specific to the Panorama platform, but that's what we'll be reviewing in March. Let's see here. Did any other questions come through? Is there a date range for when the portal will be accessed to the PSUs, available for the PSUs? So what I can say is that we are currently working with DPI. I think from the message that Tim Weiss announced 2 weeks ago, this service is continuing through the end of, currently through the end of June. No one panic. The contract renewal is, we're working through the contract renewal piece right now. So once that is up and confirmed, renewed, that's when we'll be making those announcements of being able to work towards granting you your own access to your own business units. And in the meantime, it'll be the same functionality as the EdgeGuard service, where it'll be our team looking at and reporting to you. let's see, Eric, do you want to answer that question about machine learning? Do you see that one?
Yeah, as far as I know, I don't know if I've run into that information in the past. I would assume it's proprietary to Palo. As far as it was asking about the machine learning portion of the security suite, using a trained model. Um, I haven't seen anything or heard anything from them as far as partnering. So that might be something, if we need to talk to them or get more information from them, we could potentially do that. But yeah, I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm 99% certain that that is proprietary to Palo, but we can absolutely confirm that. And we will have an FAQ that we share out with the community once the service is launched with your own access, and we'll make sure to include that in there as well. All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, Eric and I are notorious for not liking to sit awkwardly at the end of a webinar waiting for questions. You have our contact information. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, and we will be happy to assist one-on-one. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to continue to provide these services to you. We really enjoy doing this, and we're excited to launch this new service with its new capabilities to the community. So, and yes, I had another question come in. Will you email the certificate of completion out? We can work on getting that sent out to you guys as well once we get the webinar posted to the website. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon.